Imagine feeling like you've bought your own home. Maybe it's your first home, and then you find yourself on the hook for mounting fees beyond your control. Now, I'm not talking about mortgage payments, which, of course, are eye-watering at the moment. No, tonight here on Primetime, we're taking a deep dive into the service charge scandal hammering millions across the country, forcing people to take out second mortgages or loans or even take on extra jobs just to make ends meet. It's at the very heart of the leasehold system that governs many of Britain's homes. Let's take you through it, shall we? For lots of us, our first step onto the property ladder could be a leasehold. It's a lease on a property. It means you're not buying it or the land it sits on outright. This is a leasehold rather than a freehold, of course, and it often comes with added costs. 20% of the UK's housing stock is leasehold. That means up to almost 5 million households are likely paying service charges, usually paid to the freehold owner of the property for common areas and things like maintenance pots. Many leaseholders are finding these service charges, often linked to inflation, have soared. When we say soared, we really mean it. Last year, estate agents Hamptons worked out the average service charges on leasehold properties have gone up, get this, by 51% since 2018 alone. And leaseholders are finding there is nowhere to turn. In a moment, we'll hear from one man whose service charge jumped more than 5 times its cost in 2018, and he is far from alone. Leaseholders in Britain, though, are starting to refuse to suffer in silence anymore. Evidence given to Parliament that some are paying as much as £8,000 a year for very little, and the government is promising reforms. For now, the burden and stress is proving unbearable for many. We've been contacted on this show to give a voice to some of these stories, which, of course, we're going to do. For more, I'm joined now by Joe Douglas, who faces that unbelievable more than quintupling of his service charge. And with him in the studio as well, housing campaigner and founder of Free Leaseholders, Harry Scoffin. Thank you both very much for coming in. I will come to you shortly, Harry, to talk about the campaigning you do and understand what the government's doing. But Joe, you're a leaseholder. You know, we're going to be careful about this because I understand you're part of some sort of case ongoing at the moment, a tribunal, so we won't mention anything to do with who that is against by name. But what can you tell us about your situation?
Yeah, well, firstly, thank you very much for having us on because it's a really important issue. I mean, I'm just one person in this system, obviously, but I was a first-time buyer in 2015. Using the government Help to Buy scheme. For that, you need to buy a new build property. Which is what I did. Got onto the housing ladder, fantastic. A month later, I had a note through the door saying, from the developer, we're going to sell your freehold on for the entire block. Didn't really think much of it at the time, someone that I owe ground rent to. As things went on, and obviously we had the Grenfell tragedy and the horrendous situation there and the ongoing fallout from the cladding situation, a lot of these buildings are affected by it. The point that I noticed it, and there's a lot obviously that you can experience in this system, but the point when I noticed it was when the insurance 1 year doubled and then tripled I was paying £1,600 a year just for the insurance. So that's not just service charge, that's a key element of it. And I asked the freeholder, you know, you arranged this, what's going on? Because I thought we had management control. We can appoint a managing agent. We have an RMC, of which I'm a director of. And that was 2 and a bit years ago. No answer's been forthcoming, and hence the action. And that's a number of years in now.
So talk to us some more about the figures. £1,600 for your insurance alone. Do you pay other elements of a service charge as well, and how has that gone up?
Absolutely. So it has gone up. There's been effects from obviously the cladding situation. The government's brought in new protections for leaseholders now, which is very welcome. Previous to that, no one had their feet to the fire apart from the leaseholders. That's changed now. However, we've still got this issue around insurance, and you look at other buildings on the same development, different freeholder, same insurance broker, same insurer, same building, effectively the same fire risk. They're paying less than half of what we are. So I'm saying, you know, tell us why we're paying more. And we know there's commissions involved, and we know there's kickbacks. Yet we, as leaseholders, aren't entitled to see that information. My parents, they pay about £200 a year to insure their 4-bed house. Now, I'm not saying it should be exactly the same as that, but if they wanted to know anything about that policy, they could get the details. As a leaseholder, there's a man in the middle, so to speak. They've inserted themselves. They have no real role in the management of that building because that's down to us as the resident management company. And look, this could all have been solved if the government was to adopt a rule where they could just apply a very similar situation to how it works in other countries. When you buy a flat, you then own a share of that land and a share of that building. It's called common hold. We already have solutions that effectively do the same thing, called share of freehold in this country, where you don't sell it on to an investor and you don't create the conflict of interest to begin with. And that's what the government should do.
Let's talk to Harry Scoffin then about what the government are doing or not doing or promising to do, because I know this is very much your life's work at the moment. How much progress has been made on giving this transparency that Joe is talking about?
So I've been doing it now for 7 years, and it's crazy to think that democracy is not working, that it's taken us this long to get a bill from the government. It's great that there is a bill. There's been a lot of work done on it with the Law Commission in 2020. They sent out officials to Singapore and Australia to look at other fairer systems of flat ownership. Now, the government obviously are talking a great game on the bill that will give us control. And technically, insurance commissions will be banned. They're going to be called transparent fees. The problem is that this is such a cesspit of corruption, this whole system of housing. It does go back to 1066 and William the Conqueror. For as long as someone has control over someone else, abuse will flourish. And I'll just be honest, in my own case, my mum, she's paying £33,000 a year in service charges. There's no swanky swimming pool, there's no gym, there's no garden. The guy is a billionaire in Monaco that's just, you know, now richer than Richard Branson. And he's hitched a ride to our homes. And the fact is, we're having to beg the government to actually get rid of this system. And even Margaret Thatcher, you know, hardly, you know, best fan of her, she wanted to get rid of it. She proposed common hold. And on insurance, they're saying they're going to ban commissions. These freeholders, my actual freeholder down the road from us, had actually pocketed a £1.6 million kickback or commission. The leaseholders had no idea. It had to take them 3 years in tribunal. And the leaseholder that ran the case, luckily she was retired, and she's a magistrate, and she's a former top accountant. She broke into tears with exhaustion. So the thing is, the system has to change. There are some individually good policies in the bill, but it needs to go further.
Remind us of what the bill is.
So the bill's the Leasehold and Freehold Reform Bill.
And what has Michael Gove, the current Housing Minister, promised on this?
So he promised last year to abolish leasehold. Now, I understand this bill doesn't abolish it, but I wouldn't put the blame at Michael Gove. I think it's number 10 here. And there was an article in The Guardian last year that said he'd been overruled by number 10. But the thing is, I met Rishi Sunak 5-6 years ago in a Bethnal Green living room. And he says, what do you do? And I'm doing this, you know, it's Groundhog Day. I said, I'm a campaign to try and get leasehold sorted. He said, leasehold is a scam. I think it was genuine. Now the Tories are so desperate looking for a policy that's going to appeal to young people. 49% of leaseholders are first-time buyers, according to the ONS. The fact is, let us own our own homes and control them.
Let's talk about that then, Joe. You mentioned buying the home or the leasehold in 2015. You seem fairly young to me. Assuming this is your first home, what kind of stress has it put on you, this situation?
It's incredibly stressful. I mean, two and a bit years in now, and I'm representing myself and about 50 fellow leaseholders for the purpose of, you know, there's a lot of people in that building, they're all facing the same issue. We share an interest in bringing that cost down. So, you know, running with that for 2 years, and this is a very simple question that, you know, I as a leaseholder, but at least as a director of the resident management company, should be able to get this information from an insurer who's taking our money. However, there seems to be a block. So that process, obviously there's a tribunal involved, there's a process you've got to go through to get that information, is a bit of a nightmare, to put it mildly, and there's a mental strain, there's a physical strain. A lot of my time is taken up with that that effort, and it's just, you know, not something you really expect. And the kind of cruel irony is it didn't need to happen to begin with. They didn't need to sell that freehold on. They could have included it at the sale, you know, as I've said, and that's not the way things work in this country. And I think we need to do this a lot better. And there's a lot of other models out there that we could follow that this situation would just not arise in.
And it is to our understanding from our research preparing this conversation that your leaseholders say that the specifics around your case are to do with building safety issues, which you mentioned at the start of your first answer, where you discussed about the cladding and the insurance. So just to make that clear that we have looked into that as well. Look, Harry, just some closing thoughts for you. How much optimism do you have that things could change on this situation?
I think the government can get some quick wins in getting rid of forfeiture that allows freeholders to extort ordinary people in their homes, saying that all new flats, if they have to be leasehold, come with a share of the freehold. Got to be honest, the freeholder representatives are not here today. There's no debate. Even on the insurance, the Financial Conduct Authority came out and said over £80 million of kickbacks that leaseholders are paying on insurance alone to freeholders in the last 3 years. So the fact is that let's do this. Could be a quick win. They're talking about turning kebab shops into flats. The fact is, let's make sure that when people buy the homes, they're like Alan Sugar and they can say you're fired to a rip-off agent. That's what we want. That's the rest of the world. That's in Scotland. That's everywhere. Condominium, strata title. It's not rocket science. Let's have the political will. And if the Tories don't do it, we're going to be on the pressure of Labour to do it.
I can feel that you're going to keep applying that pressure, Harry. Look, it's a pleasure to have you in the studio with your insight. And Joe, thank you very much for coming in and sharing your story. I'm sure we'll be continuing this story here on Prime Time next year on the show. Is it curtains for the Body Shop? The beloved British brand calls an administrator sparking fears for thousands of jobs. We'll have the latest next.